I want something I've never told anyone. That was what Lila said to me on a balcony 20 floors above Chicago, with the party shaking the glass behind us and cold October air cutting through my jacket. 7 words. That was all I got. Then the balcony door slid open, 3 people stumbled out laughing, and the whole moment got stepped on before I even understood what it was. Lila pulled away from my ear like nothing had happened. 1 second she was close enough that I could feel her hair brush my cheek, and the next she was waving at some guy from the apartment upstairs like she had just been telling me she wanted another drink. I stood there with my hands on the metal railing, staring at her like an idiot. She looked at me once. Just once. Then she smiled too casually and said, "You look frozen." "I am frozen," I said. "You're from Chicago. That doesn't mean I enjoy suffering." She laughed, and that should have fixed everything, because that was how it usually worked with us. Lila made a joke. I answered. The strange thing passed, and we went back to being Callum and Lila. But that time, it didn't pass. I should explain that I did not want to be at that party in the first place. My name is Callum Reed. I was 31, living in an old brick apartment building in Chicago with pipes that complained every morning and an elevator that moved like it was thinking about retirement. I worked as a structural engineer, which meant I spent my days noticing cracks, shifts, weak points, bad loads, and all the tiny signs that something solid was not as solid as people thought. In my own life, I was not that sharp. Lila Collins lived 2 floors above me. 29, freelance illustrator, always with paint on one sleeve and a pencil tucked behind her ear like she had put it there 5 minutes ago and forgotten it for the rest of the day. We had known each other for 4 years. We met on a rainy train platform when her portfolio case burst open and half her sketches slid across the wet concrete. I helped her grab them before the wind took them under the tracks. She called me the least annoying stranger in Chicago, and somehow that became coffee, then dinners, then emergency calls, then the kind of friendship where you no longer knock before entering, unless one of you was mad. That week, I had been mad at everything. Work had been a mess. A project I had warned people about went sideways. 2 supervisors acted surprised, and I spent 3 days cleaning up a problem I had pointed out in writing. By Friday night, I planned to sit in my apartment, eat noodles straight from the container, and speak to no one. Lila had other plans. She showed up at my door in a green coat, holding my nicer shoes. "No," I said. "Yes," she said. "I'm not going." "You are absolutely going." I looked tired. "You always look tired. Tonight you'll look tired in public." That was Lila. She could push without making it feel like she was taking over. She knew when I needed quiet, and she knew when quiet had turned into hiding. So I went. I complained the whole cab ride, but I went. The party belonged to a friend of a friend in a glassy building near the river. Too many people, too much bass, too many lamps with bulbs that made everyone look better than real life. Lila knew half the room within 20 minutes. I knew the location of every exit. For the first hour, she kept checking on me from across the room. Not in a clingy way. Just little looks. Eyebrows raised, asking if I was alive. I would lift my cup. She would roll her eyes. We had our own language by then, built from years of grocery runs, broken sinks, bad dates, missed trains, and those evenings when one of us sat on the other's couch and said nothing because saying nothing was better than saying the wrong thing. At some point, the music got louder, or maybe I just got tired of pretending I was enjoying it. Lila came up beside me, leaned close, and said, "Balcony, before you turn into a chair." I followed her out. The cold hit me first. Then the noise softened behind the glass. The city spread below us, wet streets flashing under headlights, the river dark between buildings, people moving around down there with no idea. I was about to have one sentence rearrange my whole head. Lila stood beside me with her elbows on the railing. Her cheeks were pink from the cold. A loose strand of hair kept blowing across her mouth, and she kept trapping it with her fingers. "This is better," she said. "Most things are better than that room. You're welcome, by the way. For dragging me here against my will. For preventing you from becoming a basement ghost. I live on the 6th floor. Emotionally, basement." I laughed because she was right, and because it was easy with her. It was always easy with her. That was the problem, though I did not know it yet. We talked about my bad week. Not in detail. She already knew the details because I had called her from the office stairwell on Wednesday and talked for 16 minutes while she listened and made soft, angry noises on my behalf. On the balcony, she just asked, "Still thinking about it?" A little. Liar. Fine. A lot. She nodded like she had expected that. You did what you could. I hate when people say that. I know. That's why I waited until you couldn't escape. I turned toward her, ready with some dry answer, but she was not smiling anymore. That was when the air changed. Not in some dramatic way. There was no music swell. No perfect silence. The party was still thumping behind us. Somebody inside yelled over a song. A siren passed far below. But Lila looked at me differently, and for once I did not know what to do with it. She stepped closer because the music jumped louder behind the door. Her shoulder touched my arm. Then she leaned in, her mouth near my ear, and said those 7 words. I want something I've never told anyone. My hand tightened around the railing. What? I asked, but too late. The door opened, laughter spilled out, and the moment broke apart. After that, she was normal. Too normal. She introduced me to someone named Derek. She stole a cracker from a fancy tray and said it tasted like cardboard with ambition. She made fun of my stiff party posture. She found my coat before I even remembered where I had left it. In the cab home, she sat beside me and talked about a client who wanted a children's book box to look more financially responsible. I laughed at the right places, but I kept turning those 7 words around in my head. I want something. Something what? Something for me. Something with me. Something she had never told anyone. At our building, the lobby smelled like rain and old radiator heat. The elevator took forever, like always. We stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the numbers climb. You survived, she said. Barely. Don't be dramatic. You dragged me into a room full of strangers and lamps. Poor Callum. The elevator stopped at my floor first. I stepped out, then turned back. She had one hand on the door, holding it open. For half a second, I almost asked her. About the balcony. About the sentence. About the way she had looked at me. But she smiled and said, Sleep, Reed. So I nodded like a coward. Night, Collins. The doors closed between us. I went into my apartment, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the dark kitchen without turning on the light. Above me, faint through the ceiling, I heard her footsteps cross her apartment. I knew the sound of them. That was how familiar my life had become with her in it. I knew when she came home tired. I knew when she was painting late. I knew when she dropped something because there was always one sharp thud followed by silence. Then a text that said, Pretend you didn't hear that. I told myself the balcony meant nothing. Maybe she wanted a new job, a trip, a different life. Maybe she was about to confess she wanted to move away, or quit illustration, or buy one of those ugly little dogs she claimed to hate. But then I remembered the lasagna. 3 months earlier, after a rough site meeting, I came home so angry I could barely speak. Lila had shown up 20 minutes later with a foil-covered dish and no questions. She just put it in my oven, sat at my table, and drew in her sketchbook while I stared at the wall. When I finally said, I don't want to talk, she answered, Good. I brought food, not a courtroom. I remembered the night she fell asleep on my couch while I worked at the table. She said she was keeping me company because my apartment felt like a sad math cave. She had a deadline of her own, but she stayed until 2 in the morning anyway. I remembered a dinner in June, at that small place near Damon where she loved the lemon pasta. She looked at me across the table while I was telling some boring story about a bridge inspection, and for 1 second her face changed. Softened. Opened. Then she looked down too fast, and made a joke about my inability to describe anything without measurements. At the time, I thought I imagined it. Lying awake that night, I was not so sure. The ceiling creaked above me. Her apartment went quiet. I stared up at it like answers might leak through the plaster. Lila had been beside me for 4 years. So close she had become part of the shape of my days. The call after work. The spare key. The extra coffee. The voice in the hall. The person I trusted without thinking. And sometime in the dark, while the city kept moving outside my window, a thought landed so clearly I sat up in bed. Maybe Lila had been telling me for months. Not with one big confession. With everything else. And maybe I had missed it because I had called it friendship every time it felt like home. I did not go upstairs the next morning. That sounds simple, but it took more effort than I want to admit. I woke up after maybe 3 hours of sleep, still in the same clothes I had worn to the party, with my phone on my chest, and one thought sitting there like it had been waiting for me. Lila. Not Lila, my friend. Not Lila from upstairs who stole my hoodies when her apartment got cold. Not Lila who complained about my empty fridge like it personally disappointed her. Just Lila. And that was the problem. At 8:12, She texted me. You alive? I stared at it for almost a full minute before answering. Barely. You? She sent back a picture of her coffee mug beside a plate with half a burned bagel on it. Thriving. Normal. Easy. Nothing strange in it. I told myself that was proof I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe she really had been about to say she wanted something simple. A vacation. A change. A new couch. Lila was always saying things dramatically and then acting like everyone else was weird for reacting. But my brain would not let go of the way she had leaned in. I spent Saturday doing nothing useful. I cleaned my kitchen even though it was already clean. I opened my laptop and closed it again. I went downstairs to grab coffee and walked past the elevator 3 times like her floor might call me up by accident. It didn't. Around noon, she texted again. Soup tonight. I made too much. That was normal too. We did that all the time. One of us made too much food. The other one showed up. No invitation needed beyond one line. Usually I would have answered yes before thinking. Instead, I typed, deleted, typed again, then finally sent. Can't tonight. Work stuff. It was a lie. A small one, but still. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then she wrote. Okay. Don't become a spreadsheet. I smiled at that, but it bothered me. Not the joke. The space under it. She had noticed something. Of course she had. Lila noticed everything when it came to me, even when I was pretending there was nothing to notice. On Sunday, I went for a walk along the river because staying inside made the ceiling feel too close. The air had that sharp fall smell, wet leaves and exhaust and coffee from every corner place with fogged-up windows. Couples passed me in coats, holding hands like it was nothing. I hated that I noticed. I kept remembering things out of order. Her hand on my shoulder when my mother called with bad news about my uncle's surgery. The way she knew I hated people asking, "Are you okay?" So she would ask, food or silence, instead. The night I fixed her loose shelf and found a drawing of me tucked between 2 pages on her desk. She had snatched the sketchbook away and said, "Don't look so proud. You have an easy face to draw." I had laughed. I had not asked why she had drawn me sitting at my kitchen table, one hand in my hair, looking tired in a way only someone close would notice. By Monday, I knew I was not only thinking about her feelings. I was thinking about mine. That was harder, because once I let myself look at it straight, I saw how careful I had been. I knew how she took her coffee when she was working, how she drank tea when she was worried, how she painted faster when she was trying not to talk, how she got quiet before saying something important. I knew which side of the couch she liked. I knew she hated being called talented by clients who paid late. I knew she wore yellow when she wanted to feel braver than she felt. I knew too much to pretend I had not been paying attention. And maybe I had hidden it inside the word friendship because friendship was safe. Friendship did not ask me to risk the person I called when my day collapsed. Friendship did not make me stand in front of her door with my pulse acting stupid. Tuesday evening, I finally went upstairs. The elevator smelled like someone's takeout and old metal. I watched the numbers climb and almost hit my own floor again. Then the doors opened. Lila's hallway was warmer than mine. Her door had a small paint smudge near the handle from a year ago, when she had carried a wet canvas in one hand and groceries in the other, and refused help until she dropped the oranges. I knocked. For once, I did not just use my key. There was a pause, then footsteps. The door opened, and Lila stood there in gray sweatpants, bare feet, and an old white shirt with blue paint near the collar. Her eyes moved over my face. "Oh," she said. "Hey. Hey." Neither of us moved. Behind her, I could smell acrylic paint and peppermint tea. Her apartment looked like she had been arguing with it. 3 canvases leaned against the wall, all turned away. Brushes sat in a jar by the sink. A blanket was twisted on the couch. She had been painting too much, which meant she had been thinking too much. "You can come in," she said. I stepped inside. She closed the door but stayed near it, like she needed the option to open it again. I looked at the canvases. "Busy week." Something like that. "Lila." She looked down at her hands. There was dried green paint on her thumb. I took a breath. "What were you going to say on the balcony?" Her mouth tightened. Then she gave a small laugh that did not sound like her. "Wow. Right to it." I've been trying not to be right to it for 3 days. I was probably just being dramatic. "No." She looked at me then. I kept my voice as even as I could. "You can tell me it's none of my business. You can tell me you changed your mind. But don't tell me I imagined it." For a second, she looked tired. Not annoyed. Not trapped. just tired in a way that made me hate myself a little for missing it before. She walked past me to the kitchen and picked up her mug, then set it back down without drinking. I shouldn't have said anything, she said. That's not an answer. It's the easiest one I have. I moved closer, but not too close. Was it about me? Her eyes shut briefly. That was answer enough. I nodded, even though my chest had gone tight. How long? Callum. How long? She leaned back against the counter. 7 months. Around there. 7 months. I actually looked away, because hearing it out loud made every memory line up too fast. The lasagna, I said. She frowned. What? When I had that terrible week in July. You brought dinner and sat with me for 2 hours. That's not proof of anything. You were miserable, and your fridge had mustard and 1 lime in it. The drawing on your desk. Her face changed. The dinner at Damon, I said. When you looked at me, and then looked away like you got caught. She folded her arms, but there was no fight in it. Please don't do this like you're presenting evidence. I'm not trying to corner you. It kind of feels like it. That stopped me. I took a step back. I'm sorry. She rubbed both hands over her face, careful not to get paint near her eyes. I didn't tell you because you're my best friend. That's the whole ugly little center of it. You were not some guy I could take a chance on and then avoid if it got weird. You're you. You're the person downstairs. You're the person I call when my sink leaks or when a client makes me want to throw my tablet out the window. I didn't want to drop my feelings into your lap and make you feel responsible for them. I stood there quiet. She kept going, softer now. And I didn't want to lose what we had just because I wanted more than I was allowed to ask for. That hit harder than I expected. You were allowed to ask, I said. No, she said. I was allowed to feel it. Asking is different. I had no quick answer for that. Maybe because she was right. I looked around her apartment, at the turned canvases, the cold mug, the blanket on the couch. I thought about all the nights she had made room for my mess without asking me to name it. I'm not here because I feel guilty, I said. She watched me carefully. I need to understand where I am in this, I said. Because I don't think it's nothing. I know it's not nothing. I just don't want to say the wrong thing because I'm scared of the silence. Her face softened, but she did not move toward me. Okay, she said. That's it. What do you want me to do, Reed? Give you a deadline? No. Then take the space. I'm not going anywhere tonight. I almost smiled. Tonight. I reserve the right to be dramatic later. That made both of us laugh. Barely, but enough to let some air back into the room. I left a few minutes after that. Not because I wanted to, but because staying would have turned into reaching for her before I understood why. At the door, she touched my sleeve. Callum. I turned. I won't disappear, she said. I nodded. Me neither. The next day was useless. I went to work. I answered emails. I stared at load calculations and saw her face between every number. By late afternoon, I stopped pretending I was solving anything. The answer had been there before the question. So that evening, I went upstairs again. This time, when she opened the door, I did not stand in the hallway like a man waiting for permission from the floorboards. I said, "It's been you for a long time." Her hand stayed on the door. I just didn't know what to call it, I said. Lila stared at me, and for once she had no joke ready. Then she stepped forward, slow and careful, and put her arms around me. I held her like I had held her 100 times before, except nothing about it felt the same. Or maybe that was wrong. Maybe it felt exactly the same. Just finally honest. Our first real date should have been simple. That was what I told myself, anyway. Lila and I had eaten together more times than I could count. We had ordered noodles on my couch, split grocery store cake with forks straight from the plastic box, sat across from each other in tiny restaurants while one of us complained about work and the other stole fries. We knew how to be at a table together. But that Friday night, when I picked her up from 2 floors above mine like we did not share the same broken elevator, everything felt slightly off in a way that made both of us nervous. She opened her door wearing a black sweater, dark jeans, and small gold earrings I had seen before, but somehow noticed for the first time. I just stood there. She narrowed her eyes. Don't make it weird. I'm not. You're making it weird with your engineer face. I don't have an engineer face. You look like you're checking me for code violations. I laughed, and that helped. You look nice. Her expression changed for half a second, like the compliment had landed somewhere she had not prepared for. Then she said, "Thank you. You look less tired than usual." Romantic. I'm easing into it. We took the elevator down together, standing shoulder to shoulder like always, Except this time my hand kept brushing hers, and neither of us knew what to do with that. In the lobby, I finally reached for her fingers. She looked down at our hands, then up at me, and smiled like she was trying not to smile too much. The restaurant was a small Italian place on a corner where the windows steamed up from the kitchen. I had picked it because it was not one of our usual spots. That seemed important, though I could not have explained why. Maybe I wanted proof we were doing something new and not just renaming what we already had. The host sat us at a table near the wall. Lila took off her coat. I picked up the menu and immediately forgot how to read. "This is ridiculous," she said. "What?" "You know my coffee order, my lock code, my worst client stories, and the fact that I cried during that documentary about the old man restoring clocks. You said your eyes were tired. And now you're acting like you need conversation starters." I set the menu down. "Fine. What do people talk about on first dates?" "I think they ask about siblings, jobs, hobbies." "Do you have siblings?" "No." "Interesting. What do you do for work?" "I draw emotionally complicated animals for people who pay late." "Sounds hard." "It is. And you?" I stare at concrete until it confesses. She laughed so hard the couple beside us glanced over, and suddenly it felt normal again. Not exactly the old normal, but close enough to breathe. After dinner, we walked 3 blocks in the cold because neither of us wanted to go home yet. She slipped her hand into mine without making a show of it. Her fingers were cold. I put both our hands in my coat pocket, and she bumped her shoulder against me. "Look at you," she said. "What?" "Capable of learning." Slowly. Very slowly. That became the rhythm of the next couple weeks. Careful, warm, and a little awkward in the best way. Her mug appeared in my cabinet. Not because we discussed it. She left it after spending the night on my couch while I worked late, and I washed it and put it beside mine. The next morning she opened the cabinet, saw it there, and got quiet. "You kept it here," she said. "You use it here." That's a dangerous level of logic. I started buying the tea she liked, the one that smelled like mint and something floral I pretended not to notice. She left a book on my side table, then a hair clip on the bathroom sink, then a charger in my kitchen outlet. Every object felt small until I realized my apartment was slowly learning her. She came down after work with paint on her wrist and her laptop under her arm. I brought dinner upstairs when she had deadlines. Sometimes we kissed in the hallway like teenagers with rent. Sometimes we sat on the couch with our knees touching and said nothing because we already knew silence was part of us. The strange thing was that being close did not scare me as much as I expected. What scared me was how easy it was. Like we had stepped through a door and found out the room had been furnished for years. Still, we had to learn the new rules. One night, at a rooftop gathering for someone from my office, I learned that faster than I wanted to. Lila came with me because she said I should not be trusted alone at social events. She wore a long coat and red lipstick, and I kept losing my train of thought whenever she looked at me. Everything was fine until Sophie from my office came over. Sophie was friendly. Too friendly, maybe, but not in a way I had ever thought about. She worked in project coordination, asked smart questions, and laughed at dry comments most people missed. We ended up talking near the outdoor heater about a building delay that had made everyone's week miserable. When I looked over, Lila was standing near the drinks table, holding a paper cup with both hands. She was talking to someone, but her eyes flicked toward me once, then away. I knew that look now. It was not anger. It was not accusation. It was more like she had caught herself feeling something she did not want to admit. On the cab ride home, she stared out the window. I waited until we turned onto our street. "You got quiet." "I'm tired." "Lila." She sighed. "Don't do the voice." "What voice?" "The calm one. The one where you already noticed the thing, and now you're making room for me to say it." I almost smiled. That sounds like a useful voice. "It's annoying." "Were you bothered by Sophie?" She looked at me then, embarrassed and defensive at once. "No." "Okay. Maybe." I nodded. She groaned softly and leaned her head back against the seat. "I hate this. I hate being that person." "You're not that person." I got weird because a pretty woman from your work laughed at something you said. She laughs at everyone. It's an office survival skill. That does not help. I reached for her hand on the seat between us. "I'm glad you told me." "I barely told you." "You told me enough." She looked down at our hands. "I don't want to become difficult." "You're not difficult. You're new at this with me." "I am too." That made her quiet in a different way. When we got out of the cab, she did not let go of my hand in the lobby. She kept holding it in the elevator too. Even when Mrs. Alvarez from the third floor got on with her little cart and looked at our joined hands with open interest. "Oh," Mrs. Alvarez said. Lila lifted her chin. "Evening." Mrs. Alvarez smiled like she had just watched the ending of a show she had been following for years. After that, holding hands stopped feeling like a secret test. It became something we just did. For a while, it was good. Not perfect. Real. Better than perfect. Then, one Thursday night, I heard something above me. At first, I thought Lila had dropped a canvas. There was a sharp sound, then footsteps, then nothing. I was at my kitchen table with a set of drawings spread out in front of me, but I stopped working and listened. A minute later, I heard her voice through the ceiling. Not words, just the shape of it. Tight. Shaking. I texted her. "You okay?" No answer. I waited 2 minutes, then 3. I called. It rang out. That was enough. I went upstairs without thinking about shoes, wearing socks on the cold hall floor. When I knocked, no one answered at first. "Lila," I said through the door. A lock turned. She opened it with red eyes and her phone in her hand. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she looked down like she hated that I could see her this way. "It's my dad," she said. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Her apartment was half-lit. A mug sat on the floor near the couch, tea spilled across the boards. Her phone screen was still glowing. She looked smaller than she had an hour ago, wrapped in a cardigan, one hand pressed against her stomach like she was holding herself together. "What happened?" She swallowed. "He's been sick." I knew there was something going on, but they were waiting on more tests. My mom called. "It's serious. He needs treatment in Madison, and they want him there as soon as they can schedule it." "How long have you known?" Her face twisted with guilt. "A few weeks." I took that in. Not because I was angry, but because it hurt that she had been carrying it alone while sitting beside me at dinner, laughing in cabs, leaving her mug in my cabinet. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we had just become this," she said, her voice breaking on the last word. "And I didn't want to bring fear into it right away. I didn't want you to feel like you had to step in." I moved closer. "Lila, I thought I could handle it until I knew more. And now?" She shook her head. "Now I don't think I can drive there without falling apart." I did not have to think. "I'm coming with you." She looked up fast. "Callum, no? You have work." "I'll call in." "You don't have to do that." "I know. My mom can pick me up." "I'm sure she can." "You're not listening." "I am," I said. "I'm coming with you." Her eyes filled again, and she looked away like she was trying to stay composed out of habit. "This isn't the easy part," she said. "I know. No, I mean it. This is not dinner and hand-holding and jokes in the elevator. This is my family and hospitals, and me maybe being awful because I'm scared." I reached for her hand carefully, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. "I didn't show up because I only wanted the easy part," I said. Her fingers tightened around mine. And standing there in her messy apartment, with spilled tea on the floor and fear sitting between us, I understood that whatever we were becoming had just moved out of the soft beginning. This was the first real weight, and I was not stepping back. By 6 the next morning, we were on the highway heading toward Madison with a paper bag of gas station muffins between us and Lila's overnight bag in the back seat. She had tried to pack like a normal person. Then she had stood in the middle of her bedroom holding one sock and staring at the wall, so I packed the rest while she called her mother again. Toothbrush, sweater, phone charger, the sketchbook she always pretended she did not need and always did. For the first hour, she talked too much. Not about her father. About anything else. She told me the coffee was terrible. She said the sky looked like wet cement, and then apologized because she knew I hated lazy concrete comments. She remembered a diner near Rockford where she and her parents stopped when she was 12, and how her dad had made everyone rate the pancakes like it was an official survey. I let her talk. Then, somewhere past the state line, she ran out of words. Her hand rested on her knee, tense and pale. I reached across the center console and put my hand over hers. She turned her palm up and held on. "I'm glad you're driving," she said quietly. "Me too. If I say something rude today, pretend I'm charming." "You're always rude." "That's why I said pretend I'm charming." I smiled, but she didn't. Her eyes stayed on the road ahead. Her parents lived in a small town outside Madison, in a white house with a sloped driveway and 2 maple trees in the yard. Her mother, Elaine, opened the door before we reached the steps. She had Lila's eyes, but sharper, like she had trained herself not to panic in front of other people. Lila went straight into her arms. I stood there with her bag, feeling suddenly like a stranger who had walked into the center of something private. Then Elaine looked at me over Lila's shoulder and said, "You must be Callum." "Yes, ma'am." "Oh, don't do that. I'm not old enough for ma'am today." Lila gave a shaky laugh against her shoulder. Her father, Martin, was in the living room in a recliner by the window. He was thinner than I expected, wearing a flannel shirt and slippers, a blanket over his legs. But his eyes were clear, and when Lila knelt beside him, he touched her cheek like she was still a kid coming home from school. "There she is," he said. "Hi, Dad. And you brought the engineer." I blinked. "I've been described worse." Martin looked me over. "She talks about you like you're useful." Lila groaned. "Dad, that's high praise from her." I shook his hand carefully. His grip was weaker than he probably wanted it to be, but he held mine an extra second. "Glad you came," he said. That was all. No speech. No big inspection. Just that. And somehow it mattered more. The rest of the day moved in pieces. Tea in the kitchen. Lila helping her mother sort papers in a folder. Martin pretending he was not tired. Me fixing a loose cabinet handle because I needed something to do with my hands, and Elaine looked relieved when I offered. That night, Lila and I sat on the back porch under a yellow light while her parents went to bed early. The air smelled like leaves and wood smoke from somewhere down the block. She leaned into my side, her head against my shoulder. "I thought I would feel embarrassed having you here," she said. "Do you?" "No." She looked out at the yard. "That's the weird part. It feels like you were supposed to be here." I did not answer right away. I just took her hand. The appointment was the next morning. The waiting room had bad coffee, plastic chairs, and a television mounted too high on the wall with the sound off. Elaine sat straight-backed with her purse in her lap. Martin was taken back first for another scan and more questions. Lila sat beside me with her hands locked together so tightly her knuckles looked white. I wanted to say something helpful. Every sentence I thought of sounded thin, so I stayed quiet. When she leaned forward and put her elbows on her knees, I rubbed slow circles between her shoulders. When she got up and paced to the window, I watched her without crowding her. When she came back and sat so close our legs touched, I let her press her forehead into my shoulder. Finally, the doctor came out and brought them into a smaller room. I stayed in the hall until Lila reached back for me without looking. So I went too. The news was serious. There was no pretending otherwise. Martin needed treatment, and it would not be quick or easy. There would be appointments, travel, rough days, and a long stretch of not knowing exactly how his body would handle it. But there was a plan. A real one. The doctor said they had caught enough, soon enough, to move forward with hope. Lila covered her mouth. Elaine closed her eyes. Martin nodded like he was receiving instructions for repairing a fence. In the hallway afterward, Lila made it about 10 steps before she broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. She just stopped walking, turned into me, and grabbed the front of my shirt with both hands like her legs had given up. I held her right there near the vending machines while people walked around us. "It's a plan," she kept saying into my chest. "There's a plan. I know. He has a plan. I know." She cried harder then, not from only fear anymore, but from relief too. I did not try to fix it with some perfect line. I just held her and looked over her head at the waiting room chairs, the paper cups, the ugly carpet, all the ordinary things around a moment that did not feel ordinary at all. That was when I understood something I should have known sooner. Love was not only the balcony. It was not only finally saying the thing out loud or holding hands in a cab or waking up with her mug in my sink. It was this, standing in a waiting room and staying. On the drive back to Chicago 2 days later, Lila slept for the first half with her coat folded against the window. When she woke, the light had started to fade, and traffic thickened near the city. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," she said. "You don't have to apologize for being scared. I shut you out. You were trying not to hand me something heavy." Still, I glanced at her, then back at the road. "Tell me when you're ready. But know I'm here for the good part and the hard part. I don't need you to make yourself easy to love." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "You already have both." After that, things changed without a big announcement. Back in Chicago, her life started showing up in mine more and more. Not as clutter, as evidence. Her candle on my table, her charger by the counter, her mug in the cabinet beside mine, her sketchbook on the couch, my extra key on her ring, her tea in my kitchen, my work jacket over the back of her chair. One night in November, I came home late and found her at my kitchen table with her laptop open, her hair tied up badly, and a pan of pasta on the stove. The candle was burning between stacks of my drawings and her color notes. She looked up. Before you say anything, yes, I know your kitchen is too small for my emotional support objects. I set my bag down slowly. What? She asked. I looked around the apartment. At the food. The candle. The mug. Her bare feet tucked under the chair. The quiet way the room felt better because she was in it. Move in with me, I said. Her mouth opened, then closed. I walked closer. Not because you're already here half the time. Not because it's convenient. I want you here. On purpose. Mornings, deadlines, anxious painting, quiet dinners, bad weeks, boring Tuesdays. All of it. She stared at me, eyes bright, then said, "You really do take forever to read obvious signs." I'm improving. Slowly. Very slowly. Then she stood, came around the table, and put her arms around my neck. Yes, she said. That weekend, we moved her things down 2 floors. We argued about where the bookshelves should go. She accused me of owning towels with no personality. I told her books could be stacked in a way that did not threaten public safety. She ignored me and made a leaning tower beside the couch. By Sunday night, half the boxes were still unpacked, the floor was a mess, and we ate takeout sitting against the kitchen cabinets because the table was covered.